Good morning, and welcome to Karma Stories. Wishing you a day full of peace, truth, and just enough karma to keep things interesting. Stay with us for real tales where justice always finds its way. She said I was ruining the ambiance with my bait bucket. Then she kicked over my chair and told her yoga group to reclaim the dock for community energy. She didn't ask who I was. She didn't care. That was her mistake. For 7 years, this dock was my retreat. I built it with my uncle. I scattered ashes here. I found silence here after pulling too many people out of burning buildings. Now it was covered in glitter, champagne bottles, and HOA flyers declaring it public space under beautification. And the woman behind it all, Karen, the new HOA president with a voice like a megaphone and a personality to match. She thought she was claiming a rustic backdrop for her daughter's wedding. She didn't know she was trespassing on private land. She didn't know I had permits, documents, and a plan. She wanted a fight. I gave her one. Quietly. Thoroughly. What would you do if your sanctuary was hijacked by a woman with a clipboard and a delusion of authority? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's see how that happens. They say a man's home is his castle. Mine was a quiet slice of waterfront. A small cabin tucked away by a lake that had, until recently, been my refuge. After 25 years of sirens, smoke, and the constant thrum of adrenaline that came with firefighting, I'd earned my peace. The centerpiece of this tranquility, my own private mecca, was a small wooden dock. Nothing fancy, just a few weathered planks where I could sit, cast a line, and watch the sunrise paint the water. It was sacred ground. Then came Karen. It was one of those perfect early summer mornings. Mist still clinging to the lake, sun just peeking over the pines. I was out on the dock, coffee in one hand, fishing rod in the other. The only sounds the gentle lapping of water and the occasional bird call. That's when I saw her. A vision in a flowered kimono that looked like it had swallowed a botanical garden, wielding a selfie stick like a scepter. She wasn't alone. A gaggle of women, all spandex and determined serenity, trailed behind her. Yoga mats tucked under their arms. They marched right onto my dock. Before I could even form a sentence, Kimono Karen, with a flick of her wrist that probably had its own Instagram filter, sent my bait bucket full of perfectly good night crawlers sailing into the lake. "Excuse me," I started, my voice still rough with sleep and disbelief. She turned, her smile as artificial as the sweetener in a diet soda. "Oh, terribly sorry," she chirped. Not sounding sorry at all. "We're just setting up for our sunrise yoga session. Little bit of an eyesore, that bucket, and, well, you." She gestured vaguely in my direction. "You're kind of killing the vibe for our Instagram shots. Toxic masculinity. You know." I blinked. "This is private property." Karen let out a tinkling laugh that set my teeth on edge. "Silly goose. This is community property. We've registered this spot with the HOA for our wellness event. My dock. My meticulously maintained, definitely not communal dock. Lady, I own this land. The dock is mine. There's no HOA out here that has any say over it." She smirked, tapping her selfie stick against her palm. "Well, I don't see a sign. Do you?" "No sign. No owner. That's the general rule. Isn't it? Besides," she raised her voice, addressing her followers, "it's time we reclaim these natural spaces from gatekeepers like him." A few of her acolytes nodded sagely, adjusting their Lululemon. Nature is for everyone to share and heal in, not for one man to hoard. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. My sacred space, invaded. My property rights, dismissed with a vapid catchphrase. I felt the familiar burn in my chest. The one that used to precede charging into a burning building. But this wasn't a fire I could just put out. This was something stickier, more insidious. "You need to leave," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Oh, I don't think so," Karen said, already striking a pose. Phone extended. "We're communing. You should try it sometime." I retreated. Not because I was scared, but because I knew a shouting match with a woman armed with a selfie stick and a squadron of Lululemon-clad warriors wasn't going to end well for my blood pressure. And because I had a better idea. This wasn't a street brawl. This was war. And wars were won with strategy and evidence. Back in my cabin, the quiet was a balm. I dug out the plat map, the deed to my property, clear as day, outlining my little slice of heaven. I called my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah, who'd help me with the property purchase. Sounds like you've got a classic case of HOA overreach, Jim. Except they're not even your HOA. She chuckled, then turned serious. Document everything. Get new signs. Big ones. I ordered custom-made private property. No trespassing signs that afternoon. The kind that left no room for misinterpretation. Metal. Reflective. Deeply satisfying to unbox. The next morning, armed with my new signs and a hammer, I went back to my dock, or what was left of it. My favorite fishing chair, a comfortable old canvas thing, was floating upside down about 20 feet out in the lake. The dock itself was littered with granola bar wrappers, empty water bottles, and what looked suspiciously like a discarded crystal. The new signs I'd mentally pictured standing proud and defiant. They were nowhere to be seen, but the holes where I'd planned to put them looked freshly disturbed. Someone had been here. Someone had removed them before I'd even had a chance to install them. Then, pinned to my cabin door, I found the official notice, HOA letterhead, crisp and officious. A list of violations that read like a rap sheet for a particularly clumsy Bond villain. Unauthorized occupation of community space, leaving hazardous materials in a recreational area, presumably my phantom bait bucket and fishing gear, creating a disturbance to the peaceful enjoyment of the community. My community? I wasn't in their damn community. It took a bit of digging, not much. Really, a few casual questions to a neighbor down the road who actually was unfortunate enough to be in the Lakeview Harmony Owners Association. Turns out, Karen, full name Karen Pendleton Smythe, naturally, was the newly self-appointed HOA president, and in her infinite wisdom, she'd apparently decided the HOA's sphere of influence needed expansion. She'd redrawn the HOA boundaries herself, not with a surveyor, not with any legal filings. No, Karen had used what my neighbor described, with a snort, as a damn crayon on a printout from Google Maps. And with this masterpiece of cartographical delusion, she was attempting to impose her reign of terror, her bylaws, her organic kombucha-fueled tyranny on properties that had never been, and would never be, part of her fiefdom, my property included. The audacity was one thing. The sheer, unadulterated stupidity was another. This wasn't just about a dock anymore. This was about principle. This was about a crazy woman with a Sharpie and an inflated sense of importance trying to annex my life. I retrieved my chair from the lake, waterlogged and sad. I picked up their trash, and then I went to the hardware store, not for signs this time, for a high-definition security camera system. I also pulled out my phone, checked the recording app, if Karen wanted a war of documentation. I was an old soldier, and I knew how to build a case. The next sunrise yoga session was going to have an uninvited guest with a lens. Let her try to call that toxic masculinity. I'd call it Exhibit A. The battle lines were drawn, and this old firefighter. I was just warming up. The newly installed security camera wasn't exactly subtle. But then, subtlety was a language Karen Pendleton Smythe clearly didn't speak. I figured if she was going to act like my property was a public stage, she might as well have a proper audience. Predictably, her next move was an escalation. One morning, I found a heavy-duty chain looped through my dock pilings and padlocked, effectively barring access from the water. A brand new, professionally printed sign was zip-tied to it. HOA Authorized Event Zone. Entry prohibited. Violators will be reported to the authorities. Authorities, plural. Was she planning on calling in the National Guard over a fishing dock? I pulled out my phone, hit record. Well, Karen, I muttered, narrating for my future legal audience. You've really outdone yourself this time. I filmed the chain, the lock, the sign in glorious HD, making sure to get a wide shot that included my cabin. Then, I walked the perimeter of my property, phone still recording, carefully documenting the existing, legally recorded boundary markers, narrating their GPS coordinates from my handheld unit. Let's see her hand-drawn map stand up to satellite precision. A few days later, another crisp envelope arrived from the Lakeview Harmony Owners Association. This one threatened immediate suspension of membership privileges if I didn't cease and desist all interference with designated HOA community recreational activities. Membership privileges, I snorted. I wasn't a member. I wouldn't join her cult if she offered free, ethically sourced, artisanal kombucha for life. This was like getting a parking ticket from Mars. I carefully filed it with the growing stack of absurdity. Enough was enough. It was time for a face-to-face. The HOA office, such as it was, turned out to be a stuffy back room in a local real estate agency that probably gave Karen a discount for the sheer entertainment value she provided. I walked in, armed with a meticulously organized binder, my deed, the official county plat map, color-coded photos of her trespasses, the threatening letters, and a USB stick containing all my video recordings. Karen was there, naturally, holding court with two other board members. One, a nervous-looking man named Cliff, actually seemed to flinch when I entered. The other, a woman with a permanently pursed expression, just stared. Mr. Henderson, Karen began, her voice dripping with condescension. To what do we owe this unexpected visit? I'm here about this, I said, placing my binder on the table with a decisive thud. My property, which you seem to believe is yours. I laid out the deed, the map. This is my land. These are the legal boundaries, surveyed and recorded. Your HOA event zone is squarely within them. I pushed the USB stick across the table. And this is documentation of your repeated trespassing, vandalism, and harassment. Cliff picked up the plat map. His brow furrowed. He actually looked concerned. Karen, he began, his voice tentative. This map, it does look pretty clear. Are we sure about our boundaries? Karen waved a dismissive hand, not even glancing at my evidence. Cliff,
Darling,
don't be swayed by his negativity. We're fostering community. Mr. Henderson simply refuses to be a team player. Besides, our enhanced community beautification plan, which includes the Tranquility Bay Dock initiative, is vital for property values. My property value isn't your concern, I stated, and Tranquility Bay Dock is what I call my damn dock. Language. Mr. Henderson, she admonished. The other woman finally spoke, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. We have protocols, you know? You can't just barge in here. I'm not barging. I'm presenting facts, I countered. Facts you seem determined to ignore. I looked at Cliff. Take a look at the videos, especially the one where her wellness event involved throwing my property into the lake. Cliff actually paled a bit. Karen, however, was already moving on. Well, this has been stimulating, but we have a very important agenda today. Perhaps you could submit your concerns through the proper channels. Mr. Henderson, she smiled, a rictus of false pleasantry. The message was clear. Get lost. I left, binder in hand. They hadn't even looked at the USB. But Cliff's unease was a small crack in her armor. The following Saturday, Karen took her delusion to a whole new level. I woke to the sounds of wedding music, actual. Honest-to-God Pachelbel's cannon drifting across the water. I grabbed my phone and headed out. My dock had been transformed. A floral archway stood at its entrance. White folding chairs lined either side. A banner billowed gently in the breeze. Welcome to Tranquility Bay, an official HOA wedding and event venue. Karen was there, directing a florist and someone setting up a champagne fountain. A champagne fountain on my dock. Morning, Karen, I said, my voice deceptively calm. Bit early for a wedding, isn't it? And last I checked, I didn't RSVP to one on my property. She beamed, entirely unfazed. Oh, good morning. Just a little trial run. My Clarissa's getting married next spring. You see? And this spot is just divine. So picturesque. We're showcasing it as a premier HOA amenity. It's going to do wonders for everyone's property values. Having such a sought-after venue right here. Your daughter is getting married on my dock. The sheer unmitigated gall. Well, the HOA's Tranquility Bay dock. Yes, she corrected smoothly. It's all about enhancing our shared assets. This isn't a shared asset. This is criminal trespass and, I don't know, probably a dozen other things. I filmed everything. The archway, the chairs, the champagne, which was definitely not being kept out of the lake. Judging by a discarded bottle I saw bobbing near the edge, the caterers trampling my shoreline. I filmed Karen preening and giving directions like she was Cecil B. DeMille staging an epic. Later that day, I called in a favor. Mikey, an old buddy from the fire department, now ran a successful drone photography business. Illegal event, possible environmental contamination, and a grade-A lunatic HOA president. He'd said over the phone, "Man, Jim, I'll be there with bells on. Pro bono." This sounds like cable TV gold. Mikey's drone footage was spectacular. Crystal clear aerial shots of the whole illicit shebang, including close-ups of people casually tossing plastic champagne flutes into the water. Evidence of her enhancing property values by trashing the lake. Perfect. While Mikey processed the footage, I had another call to make. To a local realtor I knew, a shark named Brenda. "Brenda," I said, hypothetical. If a guy owned a piece of lakeside property, prime location, but was being harassed by an out-of-control HOA claiming rights they don't have, what if that guy, say, considered leasing that prime spot to something noisy, something perfectly legal, but guaranteed to make the Tranquility Bay crowd clutch their pearls? A jet ski rental, maybe a seaplane tour base. Brenda cackled. "Jimmy, are you looking to stir the pot or blow it up? I love it. We could have nuisance abatement LLC signs up by Monday." It was an extreme thought, born of extreme provocation. But the idea of Karen trying to host a serene yoga retreat next to a roaring seaplane engine had a certain appeal. Then Karen played her next card. A video popped up on the community Facebook page she administered. Grainy, poorly lit footage, clearly edited, showing me gesturing angrily. It was the day I found my chair in the lake. The audio was garbled, but subtitles helpfully translated my frustrated exclamations into threats against the community. The post was even better. Concerned residents. Karen had typed, "Our community is under threat from this agitated individual, James Henderson, who is illegally occupying HOA common land and attempting to intimidate law-abiding members. He has made threats. We must stand together to protect Tranquility Bay and ensure safety for all. Protect our peace, show strong, evict the agitator." The comments section was a cesspool of pitchfork emojis and calls for my ouster. So, that was her game. Smear campaign. Classic. I looked at my growing pile of evidence, at Mikey's pristine drone footage. I thought about Brenda's gleeful laugh. "Okay, Karen," I said to the empty room. "You want to play dirty? I was a firefighter. I know how to handle a dumpster fire." This war was far from over. It was just entering a new, very public phase. Karen's smear campaign on Facebook was annoying. A gnat buzzing around my head. But it was ultimately just digital noise. Her next move, however, was pure, unadulterated slapstick. I was enjoying a morning coffee, watching a heronfish with far more grace than Karen's yoga troupe, when I saw her down by the water. She wasn't alone. Two of her most devoted acolytes were with her, and they were armed with a bright yellow, 50-foot measuring tape. They were attempting to resurvey the boundary line. With a tape measure, one woman held an end near my property marker, while Karen, brow furrowed in intense concentration, stretched the tape towards my dock, her lips moving as she counted. It was like watching a particularly bad community theater production of Surveying for Dummies. I almost choked on my coffee. They were clearly trying to gerrymander a few extra feet to magically absorb my dock into their HOA fantasy land. I grabbed my phone. Of course, this was too good not to document. "Karen," I said, my voice carrying easily across the still water. "You know they make laser measures for that now. And actual surveyors, with licenses." She jumped, dropping her end of the tape. "We are simply verifying the community's access points. Mr. Henderson, ensuring fair use for all. Fair use of my private property. You mean? I called back. Good luck with that tape measure. County records are a bit more binding. They scurried off soon after, the yellow tape trailing behind them like a defeated snake. A few days later, I got an email, an official invitation to the next HOA board meeting. Apparently, Cliff, the nervous one, had developed a bit of a spine, or at least a healthy fear of lawsuits. The email stated the agenda included a review of property boundaries adjacent to Lot 12. My lot. This time, I wasn't just bringing my binder. I brought oversized, laminated color prints of the county plat map, the kind you can't ignore, even if you're Karen. The meeting was already tense when I arrived. Karen was shooting daggers at Cliff, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Henderson, Cliff began, clearing his throat. We've, reviewed the documents you previously provided, and the official county records. He gestured towards a large monitor displaying the plat map I'd seen him studying earlier. It appears quite clear that your property, including the dock structure, lies entirely outside the Lakeview Harmony Owners Association boundaries. A collective murmur went through the dozen or so residents crammed into the small room. I simply nodded. That's what I've been saying all along. Karen exploded. She slammed her hand on the cheap laminate table. This is an outrage. He's manipulating you all. He's deliberately trying to undermine this community. His negative energy is dragging down property values for everyone. Ma'am, I said, keeping my voice level. The only thing dragging down property values around here is an HOA president who doesn't respect private property rights and thinks a hand-drawn map trumps a legal deed. My energy is just fine. It's my property line you have a problem with. Cliff, bless his suddenly courageous heart, added, Karen, the facts are the facts. Legally, we have no jurisdiction over Mr. Henderson's land. Her face was a mask of fury. If looks could kill, I'd be a smoking crater. The meeting devolved from there, but the crucial point had been made and witnessed. While Karen was stewing in her own artisanal outrage, I was quietly finalizing my own version of community enhancement. My conversations with Brenda, the realtor, had blossomed into a rather ingenious plan. It turned out a regional seafood distributor, Poseidon's Catch Fisheries, was looking to expand their flash freezing and local processing operations. They needed a small, accessible waterside location with good road access. My little plot, with its problematic for Karen dock, was perfect. The contract was signed, permits were applied for, and approved, thanks to everything being above board and on my legally owned land. Poseidon's Catch was enthusiastic. They loved the idea of a boutique processing hub. I loved the idea of the early morning hum of refrigeration units and the occasional scent of the ocean drifting towards Karen's Tranquility Bay. She, of course, knew nothing. Exactly 1 week after the HOA meeting, the first trucks arrived. Not pickup trucks. We're talking serious commercial vehicles. A flatbed carrying a small backhoe, a cement mixer, and a crew of burly guys in hard hats. I was out there, ostensibly supervising, but mostly just enjoying the impending show. They started by professionally dismantling Karen's illegal wedding arch and stacking the debris neatly to one side. Then, the unmistakable sound of hydraulic augers biting into the earth began. Foundation posts for a sturdy commercial-grade fence and the modest building that would house the flash freezers. It didn't take long. Karen arrived like a Category 5 hurricane, her kimono flapping, phone already recording her own dramatic entrance. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked, loud enough to startle the heron a quarter-mile away. "You are destroying a protected nature sanctuary. This is HOA common land. I will have you all arrested." A man built like a small refrigerator, with Duke, project manager, stitched on his vest, calmly walked over to her. He was holding a clipboard. "Ma'am, this is a permitted construction site," Duke said, his voice a low rumble that brooked no argument. He showed her the laminated building permit, prominently displayed, and a copy of the county-approved site plan. "We have all necessary approvals from the county and state." Karen barely glanced at them, This is an outrage. This monstrosity is being built by that man. She pointed a trembling finger at me. I gave a little wave. He is a menace. He harasses women. He's trying to intimidate the community. Duke didn't even blink. Ma'am, Poseidon's Catch Fisheries leases this land from the registered property owner, Mr. James Henderson. We have a legally binding agreement. If you have an issue with the landowner, or believe there's a legitimate legal challenge to this permitted construction, I suggest you contact your attorney. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a schedule to keep. He turned his back on her and gestured to his crew. All right, boys, let's get that perimeter fence up by lunch. Karen stood there, sputtering, her face a remarkable shade of puce. Her Tranquility Bay was about to get a serious dose of industrial reality. The sweet smell of righteous, legally sanctioned revenge, I decided, was even better than morning coffee. And it probably smelled a bit like diesel fumes and, soon, fresh fish. This wasn't just about my dock anymore. This was about drawing a line in the sand. Or in this case, the rich, fertile soil of my private property, and defending it. The battle was escalating, but for the first time, I felt the tide decisively turning. What did you think of today's story? If it made your day, drop a good in the comments. If it didn't hit the mark, just type 1. Got your own thoughts? I'd love to hear them below. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's free, and it really helps the channel grow. Thank you so much for being here. The sight of Duke, the project manager from Poseidon's Catch Fisheries, calmly dismantling Karen's fantasy wedding venue with facts and permits, was a balm to my soul. The subsequent thrum of construction, the purposeful activity on my land, was the sweetest music I'd heard in months. About a week into the construction of the fishery's modest facility, a very official-looking envelope arrived. Not from Karen this time, but from the Lakeview Harmony Owners Association itself. I opened it with a certain trepidation, expecting another round of nonsensical demands. Instead, I found a letter, signed by a flustered-looking Cliff and 2 other board members. Karen's signature was conspicuously absent. It was an apology, a formal, unequivocal, "We screwed up and we're sorry" apology. It acknowledged, in dry legalese that was nonetheless deeply satisfying, that the HOA had no jurisdiction, claim, or interest in Lot 12, my property. They regretted any misunderstanding or inconvenience caused. Inconvenience. That was one word for it. I almost laughed. I filed it carefully, right on top of Karen's ludicrous violation notices. Checkmate, or so a rational person might think. Karen, however, was not a rational person. The HOA's surrender simply meant she had to change tactics. If she couldn't claim my land, she'd try to condemn its use. Suddenly, flyers appeared on lampposts and community notice boards, professionally printed, no doubt at considerable expense. Is your air safe? Local resident endangers community with toxic fish smells. Demand action. Complete with a dramatic, shadowy picture of what was supposed to be the fisheries building, though it looked more like a haunted warehouse. Then came the official complaints. She started with the county environmental health department, alleging that Poseidon's Catch was releasing noxious, unregulated bioaerosols, which I think was Karen speak for fish smell, that were poisoning the atmosphere and endangering vulnerable populations. A stern-faced inspector showed up. Clipboard in hand, Duke, ever the professional, walked him through the entire facility. The state-of-the-art ventilation systems, the waste disposal protocols, the air scrubbers. The inspector took readings, sniffed the air with a practiced nose, and declared everything fully compliant and well within all regulatory standards. He even complimented Duke on the facility's cleanliness. I watched Karen, who had materialized to witness her triumph, deflate like a leaky pool toy. The inspector gave her a polite but firm lecture on nuisance complaints and the misuse of county resources. Score another one for reality. Undeterred, Karen took her campaign online. She posted a shaky, tearful video of herself, dramatically backlit, whispering about the invisible cancer-causing vapors wafting from the death factory. She claimed her begonias were wilting and that birds were falling silent. We are all slowly being poisoned by fish exhaust. Within 24 hours, some genius online had auto-tuned her lament, set it to a catchy techno beat, and intercut it with dancing cartoon fish. Fish exhaust funk went locally viral. My buddy Mikey, the drone photographer, sent me the link with a string of crying laughing emojis. Karen Pendleton Smythe, HOA president and self-proclaimed guardian of tranquility, had become a meme. Her next move was pure theater of the absurd. I saw her one afternoon through my kitchen window. She was meticulously sealing her own windows with bath towels and duct tape. The pièce de résistance was the industrial-grade respirator mask she wore to fetch her mail. Her own home now looked like a hazardous waste containment zone. Then, the lawyer's letter arrived, not from the HOA this time, but from a high-priced firm downtown, on behalf of Mrs. Karen Pendleton Smythe, a concerned citizen. It was a cease and desist, alleging that the pervasive and offensive odors from Poseidon's catch constituted a private nuisance, causing Mrs. Pendleton Smythe significant emotional distress and loss of enjoyment of her property. I forwarded it to Sarah, my lawyer. Her reply to them was a masterpiece of brevity. A single, beautiful sentence emailed back within the hour. Our client's operations are fully permitted and compliant. Respectfully suggest you consult Local Zoning Ordinance 7B, subsection 30 regarding light industrial use in a mixed commercial residential buffer zone. No actionable nuisance exists. Zoning Code 7B. Sarah was a shark, and I loved her for it. We heard nothing further from Mrs. Pendleton Smythe's expensive downtown lawyers. Even they, it seemed, knew when they were beaten by a well-researched zoning ordinance. Karen apparently tried to rally the HOA board again, demanding they take action against the olfactory assault. But the board, having already issued a formal apology and likely received a stern talking to from their own legal counsel about harassing law-abiding businesses, wanted nothing more to do with Karen's crusade. They didn't return her calls. They indefinitely postponed any agenda items related to environmental disturbances on adjacent properties. Karen was on her own, and then a funny thing started to happen. Poseidon's catch, far from being the harbinger of doom Karen predicted, began to quietly benefit the actual community. They needed part-time help for sorting and packing, jobs that went to local teenagers and retirees. They started offering a community discount on fresh-off-the-boat seafood on Friday afternoons. Suddenly, Mrs. Henderson down the street, who used to nod politely at Karen's rants, was bragging about the amazing salmon she got for a steal. The Toxic Death Factory was providing employment and affordable, healthy food. Karen's sphere of influence, already shrinking, began to evaporate entirely. People were more interested in fresh cod than her conspiracy theories. The last I saw of Karen's active resistance, it had dwindled to something almost pathetic. The towels eventually came down from her windows. The respirator disappeared. Now, she just sits on her porch, a pair of powerful binoculars in her lap. Sometimes, when a delivery truck rumbles down the road towards Poseidon's catch, I see her lift them, meticulously counting the axles, or perhaps trying to identify the species of fish by the refrigerated truck's logo. She doesn't wave. She doesn't shriek. She just watches, a silent, defeated monarch surveying the ruins of her imaginary kingdom. The air by the lake still smells of pine and damp earth, with just a faint, briny hint of the ocean when the wind is right. And to me, that smells like victory. It smells like peace. My peace. Hard won and finally reclaimed. The Poseidon's Catch Fisheries grand opening was quite the shindig, at least by our quiet lakeside standards. Duke, the project manager, had insisted. Good for community relations. Jim, he'd said, and I had to admit, he was right. There was a small striped tent, a local catering company serving surprisingly good shrimp tacos, and even a little ribbon for someone to cut. The county supervisor was there, along with a couple of reporters from the local paper and the regional business journal. Mikey, my drone-flying firefighter buddy, was getting some great aerial shots. Officially this time, I spotted Karen. Of course, or rather, a poorly disguised version of her. She was lurking behind a large oak tree on the edge of the public parkland that abutted my property line, the actual community land. She wore an enormous floppy sun hat that obscured most of her face and sunglasses big enough to be classified as windshields. It was the kind of incognito getup that screamed, "Look at me! I'm trying to be inconspicuous." She was too far away for me to see if she still had her binoculars, but I wouldn't have been surprised. The county supervisor, a sensible woman named Martha Rodriguez, gave a short, upbeat speech about local enterprise and sustainable resources. Then she said, "And I especially want to thank the landowner, Mr. James Henderson, whose courage and commitment to his property rights, and ultimately his willingness to partner with a responsible local business, have made this possible. Jim stood his ground for what was right, and our community is better for it." A smattering of applause. I just raised a hand in a brief acknowledgement. A little embarrassed. I hadn't done it for public thanks. I'd done it because a bully tried to take what was mine. Still, it felt good to have the official record reflect reality. Soon, Poseidon's Catch was humming along. Trucks came and went at reasonable hours. The machinery emitted a low, steady thrum, easily absorbed by the surrounding woods. Far less intrusive than, say, a pack of shrieking yoga enthusiasts at dawn. The faintest scent of salt and sea often hung in the air, a clean, briny aroma that many, myself included, found rather pleasant. It certainly beat the cloying sweetness of Karen's aggressively floral detergents from her kimono washing days. The most interesting shift was in the neighborhood. A few folks who had initially been swayed by Karen's toxic fish factory rhetoric started to change their tune. Young Billy Thompson from down the street, who'd been struggling to find summer work, was now proudly sporting a Poseidon's Catch t-shirt, helping out with the afternoon fish sorting. Old Mrs. Gable's grandson, home from college, was doing part-time data entry for their inventory. Suddenly, the monstrosity was providing local jobs, tangible benefits. The Friday afternoon discounted seafood sales became a local highlight. Amazing how quickly negative energy dissipates when your kid gets a paycheck and you can get fresh snapper for half price. Karen made one last, desperate stand. New flyers appeared, hastily photocopied this time. The quality as degraded as her influence. Protest the poisoners. Save our lake. Rally at noon. It shrieked in angry capitals. On the appointed day, I saw her, standing by the entrance to my property, the fisheries entrance now, holding a crudely painted sign that read, "No fish farms in our paradise." She looked small and slightly unhinged. One or two of her most die-hard former acolytes hovered awkwardly nearby for about 10 minutes, then seemed to remember urgent prior engagements. No one else showed up. After an hour of solitary, ignored protest, she furled her sign and trudged home. The parade had well and truly passed her by. A few days after that, an unstamped envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside, a single sheet of cheap notebook paper, with block letters scrawled in what looked like a failing red pen. "You have destroyed everything. This was a beautiful place. I hope you're happy. I'm selling my house." There was no signature, but I knew the author. "Destroyed everything. Lady, you tried to steal my dog for your daughter's wedding backdrop." The final nail in the coffin of Karen's reign came not from me, but from the HOA itself. Apparently, Cliff, emboldened by the community's shift and thoroughly tired of Karen's antics, had spearheaded a special meeting. The agenda: review of board leadership and community representation. I wasn't there. But Mikey, who still had friends in the HOA, gave me the rundown. Karen was officially voted out as president. A new board was elected, composed of actual residents who seemed more interested in pragmatic neighborhood upkeep than in grandiose power plays or redrawing maps with crayons. They even, according to Mikey, formally adopted a resolution to stick to their actual legal boundaries. Imagine that. It wasn't long after that, a for sale sign appeared in Karen's yard. The once meticulously manicured flower beds were already showing signs of neglect, weeds poking through, the vibrant colors fading. She moved out on a gray, drizzly morning. No fanfare, no dramatic farewells, Just a moving truck and then quiet. Tonight, the air is cool. I'm back on my dock, my fishing line a silver thread in the twilight. The lights from the Poseidon's catch facility cast a soft, steady glow across the water, a beacon of productivity rather than a blight. The rhythmic hum of its machinery is a gentle counterpoint to the chirping of crickets. No more screaming about toxic masculinity or reclaiming nature. No more selfie sticks violating my peace. It wasn't about revenge, I reflected, casting my line into the darkening water. Revenge is messy. Emotional? This was about justice, the kind of justice that comes from knowing the law, gathering your facts, and patiently, strategically, outmaneuvering a bully. It was about reclaiming not just a piece of land, but a piece of my hard-earned serenity. And as the first star pricked the velvet sky, that felt like the biggest victory of all. Dine? This story hit close to home for me. Entitlement. Control. And what happens when power goes unchecked? What do you think? Was I justified? Did Karen go too far? Or was I the one who pushed back too hard? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if HOA horror stories like this are your kind of thing, don't forget to subscribe. We've got more chaos on the way.